First story, the Evergreen Hand. I had always told myself that small towns kept their secrets under polite smiles and holiday lights, but Millersfield hid a truth so cold it bent the bones of memory. On Christmas Eve, I walked toward the square because I could not sleep. The snow had a thin, hard crust that cracked beneath my boots like brittle paper. The tree at the center, tall, proud, the one on Main Street everyone took pictures by, was already lit, a halo of cheap bulbs that made the faces of the crowd glassy. I thought I would find carolers, hot cider, laughter. I found something else. There were bodies, hung like ornaments, human shapes draped over the branches as if the tree had learned to wear flesh instead of tinsel. Arms hooked on low limbs, heads tilted at impossible angles, faces frozen in a silence louder than any hymn. Their coats were dusted with snow. Their mouths were open in the same mute pleading. I remember the first time I saw them, I stepped back and almost vomited, but my feet would not move. I stood and listened to the wind talking through the lights, and the wind seemed to speak in names. People were gathered below, not running, not screaming, only watching. Some pressed their palms together, some crossed themselves. Some filmed the scene with their phones as though they were preserving a miracle rather than witnessing atrocity. There was a woman I knew from the diner, Maggie, her cheeks streaked with tears that glittered like salt. She looked at the tree and nodded like a person confirming an old, terrible fact. I could feel a hand at the hollow of my sternum, pressing as if some memory had been waiting for me to arrive. I introduced myself to no one. My name is Ethan Cole, and I am not a brave man. I had come to Millersfield years ago to save myself from a life of quiet disappointments. I had not expected to find myth in the place between the hardware store and the bakery. I moved closer, staring at a man whose coat I recognized. Mr. Hargrove, the school janitor, the one who used to tell dreadful jokes at the Christmas pageant. His eyes were open but clouded. In the light, he looked like he might blink. When I saw Sarah, I felt the air leave my lungs. Sarah had been my neighbor. She used to wave from her porch and give me 2 sweet bread when November made me hungry. She hung from a branch as if she had been set there with careful hands. Her scarf had come loose and flowed like a small red flag. I could not hear my voice for a long time. The world had narrowed to the sound of the bulbs fizzing and the distant, polite chatter of the spectators. Why? I asked the woman at my elbow, an old man with hands like work gloves, and his answer came slow and thin as smoke. "The tree takes," he said, not unkindly. "It takes what it needs. It keeps the town from remembering worse things." He smiled like a man explaining a bargain. I wanted to run. Instead, I found myself circling the tree, reading the faces, matching names to ghosts. Each body carried a story. Each story was a thread that reached back into Millersfield's listless years. Debts, betrayals, a labor dispute gone bad, a cover-up beneath the city hall floorboards, a child who disappeared and left only the echo of laughter. The tree, someone said, was an old thing. It had taken before, in winters where the river froze and grief grew long. People had learned to bring it offerings, leftovers, trinkets, whispered apologies. It liked promises. It liked being remembered. We had kept it fed. I remembered my father now. He had left the house when I was small, carried his coat over his arm, and never looked back. I had spent years wanting a reason, a cause, a sin to point at and say, that is why. Standing beneath the evergreen with its human ornaments, the old ache in my chest split open into a map. I could see, jagged and unashamed, the small betrayals that had accumulated in Millersfield like frost. People who turned away, people who covered for their neighbors, people who whispered that some losses were simply regrettable. The tree had been listening for decades. Someone handed me a candle. I took it because my hands were shaking, and the flame made my shadow tall on the snow. We moved closer to the bodies as a group, a slow procession, the way sheep follow a bell. The mayor stepped forward and spoke about mourning and unity. His voice warmed and lightened like melted snow. He spoke of rebuilding and vigilance, and people nodded as if those words could stitch skin back where it had been torn. I wanted to hurl the candle away, or to smash the lights, or to pull every limb down until the tree was a broken, naked thing. But I did not. The town had taught me the posture of submission. The tree had taught me the posture of dread. When the ceremony ended, The crowd dispersed in small knots, taking photographs, making plans, whispering conspiratorially. Only a few of us remained near the trunk, moving like roots. Maggie pressed a handful of coins into my palm, old copper, warm, and mouthed that I should be careful. "It looks for a hand that will feed it willingly," she said, and the words slid over me like oil, making me slick and slippery. I knew then that I had a choice: walk away and keep my secrets tight inside, or stay and try to learn what the tree asked for. Pride, curled bitter and hot, told me to act. I wanted to be the kind of person who could save his town. I wanted to be the son who could muffle the noise his father left behind. I leaned forward and placed my candle against the bark. The tree answered not with voice, but with memory. The world folded like paper around a crease, and I saw, in a flash so bright it felt like heat, faces of people I had wronged by omission, teachers I had ignored, a friendship left in the gutter, a letter I had not sent. I saw my father, small and trembling, at my bedroom door the night he left. I saw my own hands cover my ears when my neighbor cried. I wanted to say sorry with all the marrow of me. I wanted to beg. The branches tightened like a fist. It was not violent, it was inevitable. The bark opened where my candle touched, a seam like a mouth. It received my apology like a promise, and then it wanted something more. Not repentance, not words, but wait. I could resist, I could run, but my feet were rooted. There was a quiet, an absolute acceptance that unloaded into me. I felt warmth flow down my arms, as if someone had wrapped me in a coat of light and snow at once. I heard my name called like an invitation. My last thought, if it can be called a thought, was of the things we leave undone. In the reflection of the bulbs, I saw a man who had come to be forgiven and instead had been chosen. The crowd below continued to murmur. The mayor raised his hand in a blessing. Maggie crossed herself. When I opened my eyes later, because the tree gives no mercy, but it does keep its promises, I saw the square from a new angle. My mouth tasted of pine. My scarf had become part of the branches. I had never felt so seen. The lights danced, children pointed and were hushed. Someone took a photograph, and the flash made my face pale and eternal. This is what Millersfield keeps. A calendar of receipts and debts hung high so no one forgets that memory requires payment. They will splice my story into the next winter's whisper and speak my name as a lesson. They will pretend they do not see the way the tree's shadow moves like a hand across Main Street. They will call it tradition. They will sing carols until the last string of bulbs burns out. I do not feel fear anymore. I feel the slow, patient turning of the world. I hang and learn every year to listen for the names the wind brings, because the town will need them again. Second story, the bells that would not sleep. I always thought Christmas was a kind of small miracle. Lights stitched like trembling stars across our porch, Sarah humming while she wrapped gifts, the kids arguing about which ornament belonged to whom. That night, the snow was soft and steady, and Maple Hollow slept under a blanket I could almost hear. I remember standing at the kitchen sink, hands in warm water, watching the steam rise, and feeling like nothing terrible could cross the threshold of our little house. I was wrong. It began with a sound I could not place. Not a knock, not wind, but a thin ringing that threaded through the walls like a distant bell. Emily lifted her head from the couch and smiled, thinking it was one of the carolers down on Main. Jacob ran to the window, scrunched his nose, and said, "Somebody's outside." Sarah laughed and told him to stop scaring them. The ringing grew sharper, closer, and there was a smell on the air like pine sap warmed in an oven, sweet and rotten at once. I opened the door. They were not people. They moved like shadows that had learned to walk, like lengths of night stitched to the shape of limbs. Their faces, if they were faces, were covered with frost and moss, and when one of them looked at me with too many eyes, I heard the bell again, louder, and a voice that sounded like the scraping of chairs. "Come down. Come down." They did not come with the clumsy violence of thieves. They came like a tide, shaping themselves to fit through cracked jambs and chimneys, through the spaces that warmth left behind. Sarah gathered the kids and drew the curtains. I bolted the deadbolt and felt something press against the frame, a soft, patient force that sighed like a wind trying to remember my name. The little lights in the living room flickered. Once, twice, then burned steady. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and a baseball bat from the hall, ridiculous talismans for the deep wrongness waiting outside. "Stay together," I told them, my voice thinner than I liked. Jacob clutched his stuffed reindeer to his chest. Emily began to hum a carol, hopeful as a hand extended across a dark room. I thought that would help. They did not attack the way animals attack. The first one slipped through the gap under the back door, a smear of cloth and bark, and moved toward the Christmas tree like a man approaching a shrine. When it reached the ornaments, it paused, and the bell sound swelled, not from its throat, but from the house itself. The creature pressed its long fingers to the glass baubles, and the ornaments answered with a high, bright ring that made my teeth ache. Then the creature touched the small porcelain angel that hung from Sarah's favorite branch, and the angel's painted face cracked, hairline fractures spidering like frozen laughter. The creature put the angel to its face, and for a moment I could see my own daughter's face reflected in those broken eyes. I screamed. I tried to fight. I swung until my bat was splintered, until my hands were raw. I thought noise would save us. Make the world notice, wake the neighbors, call down some sensible light of police and radios and engines. But the ringing swallowed the house like a net, and when I shouted out Sarah's name, her answer came from the kitchen floor. She was kneeling, hands pressed to the cabinet as if in prayer, and the shadow things circled her like moths. One leaned close and seemed to pour that bell sound into her ear. Her eyes widened, and then she laughed, a high, thin sound I could not place in her. "It knows our music," she said, smiling at no one. "It remembers carols." I rushed to her. By the time I reached her, the creatures had hung things, not trophies, but messages. They draped the house with strings of tinsel that crawled like living wire, threaded with little bones and bits of wreaths. They had taken the stockings from the mantel and filled them with cold, pale bulbs that pulsed like trapped stars. In the light of my dying flashlight, I saw that each bulb held a face, not whole, but pieces. An earlobe, a child's lower lip, a curl of brown hair, all preserved beneath skin as thin as rice paper. I threw up. I do not remember everything that happened next in clear frames. Memory becomes a handful of shards. The way Jacob's small hands reached for me and were pulled away by something that smelled like cinnamon and iron. The way Emily clung to Sarah and then looked at me with a calm that was not hers. The way the front window exploded inward like a page torn from a book. I remember one thing with terrible clarity. The bell sound was shaping us. It spoke of rituals that tasted like sugar and salt, like the bones of old holidays. It wanted us to become ornaments, to be hung where others might look and not see. I made a decision then, ugly and brave. Better I should be the bait than they take the children. I backed toward the door with hands shaking, and every creature turned its head as if I had shouted my name into their dream. I opened the door and stepped into the snow. The world outside was not quiet. It was full of the same ringing, coming from every house and lamppost, from the church bell that had not tolled, from the frozen trees. Figures moved between porches, lifting wreaths and peering into windows with the slow curiosity of something that remembers being human. I could smell the Christmas trees from a mile away. I ran, stumbled, and ran again, leading them away from the house in the one direction I thought kept the family safe. I lit a flare from the emergency kit. The orange flare sizzled like a small sun, and the creatures recoiled, hissing at the brightness. For a moment, I felt triumph. Light burns them. I thought of the string lights wrapped around our porch, the glowing bulbs, and how they might be used to trap them like moths to a porch lamp. I rushed back. The porch was already a tableau of the wrongness, ornaments thumping against the door as if something inside were rearranging itself. The kid's sled lay broken in the snow, its rope gone. The front door hung open on splintered hinges, and there, on the lawn, the first Christmas wreath breathed like a chest. My victory turned to ash when I saw what hung from it, Emily's pink mitten dangling like an earring. I stumbled forward. Inside, the house looked like a winter carnival of errors. The tree lights still blinked, faithfully festive, but the glow was colder, and inside each bulb something moved. Sarah stood in the middle of the living room, her head thrown back, hair wringing with frost. Around her neck was the strand of bulbs, and each bulb contained a sliver of our lives. The creatures were not eating us. They were collecting us, turning memory into display. "Stay," Sarah said softly. "Look at us." Her voice was the chime now, and when she smiled, the smile was like a wreath unraveling. I could not move. I grabbed the strand from her and threw it to the floor. The bulbs shattered like little moons, and for a second I saw Jacob's face, alive and furious, reflected in the shards. Then the creatures were on me, and their fingers found the seams of my jacket and pushed inside, warm as a mouth. I felt a cold ring at my throat, and then the world swung, and my knees hit the carpet. Time fractured into a long, slow bell that pealed until my ears bled color. I woke to someone else's hands, thin, twigged hands, arranging me on the ladder beneath the tree. My body moved like a puppet with too many strings. I could not speak, but I could see. Emily and Jacob were already ornaments in our tree, pale and perfect, eyes open wide as if surprised at their own holiday. Sarah hung a final bulb, and the tree glowed like a heart. The creatures climbed back to the windows and watched us. They had smiles that were not smiles, contentment carved from the night's work. Their bell rang, and it sounded like applause. I am writing this, and yet I am the thing that watches the writing. I do not know if what I send will reach anyone beyond this house. There is a warmth in the room now, the way a room warms around a sleeper, and the bell sound lulls. They taught me to tie ribbons just so. I learned to whisper the carols in the right tone. The neighbors call and ask if we are all right. Sarah answers for us sometimes, in a voice that makes my throat ache with recognition. "We are fine," she says. "We will be here on Christmas." Sometimes, late, I feel a small memory rise like a moth trapped beneath glass, a memory of breath against winter air, of the flare smoking in my palm, of running with the wind in my teeth. I try to reach for it, to hold to the man who once decided to trade himself for his children. But the house knows the song to put me back to sleep. The tree spills light over my face. The ornaments hum with the faces of our town. When callers ask if we will open the door, Sarah smiles and shakes her head. "No," she says, "not tonight." I have learned that the bell is not only sound but promise. It promises that no one will be lonely under its ring, because everyone is brought to hang where others can see. It promises company that never leaves. It promises that the night will remember us exactly as we were, frozen on branches to be admired, to be pointed at by tourists who will whisper that Maple Hollow has its traditions. I used to think death was final. It is final, but it is also tidy. It is wrapped and hung and lit for display. If you ever walk down our street and your eyes catch the reflection of someone you knew in a tree bulb, do not knock. Do not try to break what they have become. They smile when you look, and they will whisper to you in the language of carols. They will tell you that the cold is nothing. They will tell you that the lights are beautiful, and then they will ask you to come home. And if you go, you will learn how much easier it is to be hung than to be left alone. Third story, the lanterns under the holly. I remember the smell of pine and frying bacon, the way Sarah's laugh folded around our little kitchen like a warm blanket. We had decked the porch in strings of white lights, and Emma had insisted on placing the plastic red-nosed reindeer by the mailbox, proud as if she had hung the stars herself. It was Christmas Eve, and the town of Ashfield, Ohio, slept under a brittle silver sky. I was supposed to be happy. I wanted to be. But at midnight, something changed. There was a sound at first like wind through a hollow chest, a slow rubbing that set the windows trembling. Jacob woke and clutched my arm. He always did that when thunder passed. Yet outside the storm was still. The street lamps burned with a sterile, distant patience. I told them to tuck back in, that it was only the house settling. Sarah kissed my temple and went back to humming the carols she always hummed when she wrapped gifts. Emma fell asleep with her mittened hands folded on the covers. I stayed up thinking of lists and bills and the small, ordinary miracles of making it through another year. The knocking came soft at first, as if made by children practicing at a door. Then it gathered itself into a rhythm that matched the slow pulse in my throat. I went to the window and peered into the dark. The yard was wrong. Every shadow seemed taller. Every silhouette stretched like guilty things trying to stand upright. The big holly by the stoop, which had always been stubborn and placid, cast a shade that moved against the snow like a living thing. When I opened the front door, the porch light blinked and then died, dropping us into a velvet so deep my voice came back at me like a stranger. Footprints had been pressed into the snow, too many, and all heading around the house, circling like hands. They were not human prints. They were long and clawed, and the spacing between them made my chest hurt, like a hand tightening around my ribs. I heard a rustling at the holly, then a sound like bells, but broken, tiny shards tinkling against something hard. The creatures stepped into the glow from the street, and I saw their faces, pale as wax, entirely smooth where eyes should be, save for the gleam of something that reflected the lights like oil. Their mouths hung with thin, pale teeth that chattered without sound. They moved in a crooked, beautiful march, as if dancing to a music no ear could hear. They did not speak. They did not need to. I slammed the door. My hands were shaking so hard the lock rattled. Sarah woke, and the house smelled suddenly of burnt toast and fear. We piled into the living room and shut the blinds, but muffled thuds still crept along the walls, small, determined taps like someone walking around our bones. Emma whimpered and clutched her bear, but she did not cry out. There was a small dignity to the way my children held on. Outside, one of the creatures pressed its face to the glass. It made no expression, but at the corner of its lip a thin black sap oozed, and it left a smear against the pane like a promise. I could not look away. When the creature withdrew, the smear remained, and for a second it looked like a map of my hometown. Streets I knew, the church where we had married, the tree by the square, and the smear moved. I knew then that calling the police would be useless. How do you explain the impossible outside a breakfast joint at 2 in the morning? I grabbed the old hunting shotgun from the closet because the rational part of me still believed there were rules. Sarah shook her head and said, "Please, please do not," as if my manhood had been a fragile thing that could be broken by taking aim at the dark. But I could not do nothing. When I opened the door again, the creatures had been joined by more. They clambered over the porch like ivy, thin arms writhing. One reached past the holly and laid a hand on the railing where my glove had sat. Its touch smelled like cold iron and something sweeter, like the inside of a bell. It pressed and then tapped the wood in a steady morse for a beat that matched my heart. I realized then that they were naming the house. They did not enter right away. They circled, they listened, and when they found the places in the house where laughter had been stored, they scraped them out. First the ornaments, then the stockings, then the photograph albums, until the pictures had frayed and the smiles inside them had been turned to blank paper. I cried out and tried to pull the albums back, but my hands went through them as if reaching for smoke. By the time I understood what they were doing, a silence filled the rooms where our voices had lived. The eldest creature, if age can be read on such things, tilted its head at me, and in that gesture I heard the names of my father, my grandfather, the men who had baptized me with cold beer and quieter curses. It was like a slow, cruel tally. All the debts I had not paid, all the promises I had not kept. Then it pressed its palm to the glass and smiled. I fired. The blast broke the glass into a constellation that rained inward. The creature staggered and dissolved like frost into 100 tiny lanterns, each a light that hovered in the air. They floated under the holly and drifted through the house, tiny, bright things that skimmed over Sarah's face and settled at Emma's feet. They were not lights to guide us. They were cold-toothed candles that licked at warmth. I thought I had won. I thought the cracked windows and bleeding bulbs and the silence that followed were proof. But when I woke, because I had slept then, or fainted, or been taken by the exhaustion of terror, Emma was gone. There was a note on the kitchen table written in a hand I did not recognize, looping and patient. It said simply, "We took what belonged to the cold. We left you the wreath. Do not leave the house." I searched the town the next day and found the square tree hung with mittens and gloves and little bells, and between the branches like trophies were faces, pale, waxen things that when looked at too long bent toward me like questions. The church bells had not rung all day. They hummed with the sound of something that had swallowed voice. That night, someone knocked on my door again. I opened it and found Emma on the porch, thinner, with eyes that reflected stars. She smiled a smile that was not hers. When she stepped inside, she did not close the door. She walked to the holly and placed her small hand against it, and for a moment I saw the map in the sap again, and my own street, and our house circled with long, neat claws. I tried to pull her away. Her skin was cold as glass. She looked at me and said my name in a voice that had the sound of a bell underwater, so soft it was almost prayer. Then she reached up and touched my face, and with that touch, something shifted inside me like a lock undone. I woke up on the porch at dawn, Sarah's scarf in my hands, everything around me quiet and impossible. The house behind me had its lights on, and inside I could hear carols. I went in and found the albums whole, the ornaments unbroken, Sarah asleep on the couch with a smile like a secret. Emma lay in her bed, the bear tucked under her chin. Nothing was wrong except for the hollowness under my ribs where a laugh should be. I told them I had been out to fetch firewood. They did not ask. When night comes now, I lie awake and listen for the soft tapping at the holly. Sometimes I think I hear Emma singing, and sometimes I hear the bell-broken chime of those lanterns drifting under the eaves. I have learned to keep the door closed. I have learned to sleep with one eye open, and on certain Christmas Eves, when the snow has the wrong kind of shine, I tidy the porch and hang an extra wreath, because it is easier to offer a circle than to fight the shape of things that come from the cold. If you ever visit Ashfield, walk past our house at midnight and count the lights. If you are brave enough to look under the holly, you might see small lanterns bobbing like drowned stars. Do not knock. Do not say my name. For there are things that keep Christmas, and there are things that take it, and once they know your address, they remember you by the songs you never learned to finish. Fourth story, The Carol Beneath Black Pines. I still remember the way the snow sounded that night. Not soft, not peaceful. It cracked under my boots like thin bones. Christmas Eve in Black Hollow, Oregon was supposed to be quiet. The kind of town where every porch glows with warm lights, where old men wave from pickup trucks, where the church bell rings once an hour like a heartbeat. I had come back after 10 years away, dragging my past behind me like a shadow that refused to stay buried. My name is Ethan Moore, and this is the last Christmas I will ever remember as human. I arrived at my childhood home just before dark. The house stood alone at the edge of the forest, black pines rising behind it like watchful giants. My parents were already gone. My younger sister, Claire, had disappeared the previous winter. The police said she ran away. The forest said nothing, and that silence screamed louder than any answer. Inside, the house smelled of dust, pine needles, and old prayers. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, exactly where my mother used to place it, decorated, lit, alive. I hadn't done that. The radio in the kitchen crackled to life on its own. A carol drifted through the room, slow and warped, sung by voices that didn't breathe between words. I shut it off with shaking hands. I told myself it was just memory. I lied. That night, the snow began to fall harder. Thick, heavy, suffocating. The power went out just after midnight. When the lights died, something else woke up. I heard footsteps outside, slow, careful, circling the house. I looked through the window and saw them standing at the tree line, tall shapes wrapped in dark coats that looked wet even though it hadn't rained. Their faces were hidden, but I felt their attention settle on me like frost on skin. One of them lifted its head and began to sing, the same carol, Claire's favorite. I backed away from the window. My breath fogged the air. The singing grew louder, closer, as if the forest itself was moving toward the house. Then came the knock, not loud, not urgent, polite. "Ethan," a voice whispered, my sister's voice. I opened the door. She stood there smiling, snow clinging to her hair, eyes too dark, too empty, her mouth opened wider than it should have when she spoke. "Come outside, it's time." Behind her, the others waited, their heads turned in perfect unison. I saw what was beneath their coats then. Not bodies, not really. Hollow frames of wood and bone, wrapped in skin that had been worn thin by time and cold. Their feet did not touch the snow. I slammed the door and locked it. The walls began to shake. The carol rose into a scream. The Christmas tree lights flickered back on, glowing red instead of gold. The ornaments began to bleed. The floorboards split. Black roots burst up from beneath the house, crawling toward me, wrapping around my legs, my chest, my throat. I was dragged toward the tree as the voices chanted my name. The forest pressed in through the walls, through the windows, through my lungs. I understood then. Black Hollow didn't celebrate Christmas. It harvested it. The roots pulled me outside. The cold no longer hurt. The snow welcomed me. The figures dressed me in a dark coat stitched from pine bark and skin. Claire stood beside me, her smile finally peaceful. "You'll sing next year," she said. They led me into the forest, where hundreds of shapes stood between the trees. Faces I recognized, neighbors, friends, family, all singing, all waiting. As dawn broke, the town bells rang. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children opened presents. No one noticed the extra voices beneath the carols drifting from the woods. Now I stand among the black pines every Christmas Eve. I sing when the snow begins to crack. I knock when the lights go out. And when you hear a familiar voice calling your name from the dark, smiling through the falling snow, open the door. First story, The Lantern Behind the Seventh Door. The first time I saw the lantern, the snow was falling so heavily that Ashford looked unfinished, like a town erased and redrawn too many times. It was 3 days before Christmas, the kind of night when sound feels swallowed by the sky. I drove in because my sister Claire had stopped answering her phone. No warning, no fight, no goodbye, just silence stretching longer with every mile. Her house stood on Garrison Street, lights off, door unlocked, cold breathing through the cracks like something alive. Inside, the air smelled old and still. The Christmas tree stood bare in the corner, needles dry and gray, as if it had been waiting too long. And there, in the center of the living room, sat the lantern. It was made of rough iron, scarred by time, its glass glowing with a pale, steady light that did not flicker. It gave no warmth, yet the moment I stepped closer, my chest tightened. The light felt aware, watching. When I touched it, my breath caught. A memory slid into my mind without permission. Claire at 8 years old, running through fresh snow, her laugh sharp and bright. Then it vanished. Instantly, something else was gone. I tried to remember my drive into town. The road blurred. The details were missing. Fear crept in slowly, the way frost spreads across glass. I should have left then. Instead, I carried the lantern. The town changed quietly over the next days. People smiled more. Too much. Old arguments faded. Regrets were spoken of like bad dreams already forgotten. At night, lights appeared behind windows where darkness used to live. Lanterns. Almost every house had one. People said they helped them forget pain. They called it mercy. They called it Christmas magic. No one spoke of the cost. I noticed it in pieces. Mrs. Harlan forgot her husband's name while standing beside him. A man at the diner stared at his reflection like it belonged to someone else. Children laughed, but their laughter felt hollow, as if they did not know why they were happy. Names slipped from my own mind. Faces blurred at the edges. Meanwhile, my head grew heavy with chuji spaghetti, memories that did not belong to me pressing against my thoughts like hands on glass. People began disappearing, not suddenly, slowly. First, their stories vanished, then their photographs, then the spaces where they had been felt empty, as if they had never existed. The town accepted it with frightening calm. I found Claire the night before Christmas in the cemetery. Snow covered the graves like clean lies. She stood among them holding the lantern, her face peaceful, her eyes empty. She smiled when she saw me, but it was the smile of someone who trusted me without knowing why. She said the lantern made everything quiet. She said it helped her forget the parts of life that hurt. She did not remember why she loved me. That was when I understood. The lantern did not heal pain. It erased identity. It fed on memory, leaving obedience and calm behind. On Christmas Eve, the town gathered near the old meeting hall. Lanterns glowed like trapped stars in their hands. The air hummed with something ancient and wrong. When midnight came, the lights flared violently. People screamed, not in fear at first, but in confusion. Parents forgot their children. Lovers forgot each other's faces. Lives unraveled in seconds. I felt everything rushing toward me, every stolen memory clawing for a place to land. I ran. I carried my lantern through the snow to the oldest oak tree on the common, its branches heavy with carved initials and forgotten promises. My hands shook, but my mind was clear in a terrible way. I smashed the lantern against the roots. The glass shattered. The light collapsed inward like a dying star. The memories did not return to their owners. They entered me. I screamed as a town poured into my skull. Laughter, grief, secrets, love, regret. Thousands of lives stitched themselves into my bones. When I woke, the snow was still falling. The lantern was gone. Ashford survived. People remember Christmas. They remember warmth and light and peace. They do not remember what was taken. Claire hugs me like a stranger who trusts me for no reason. And I walk the streets at night, carrying an entire town inside my mind.